Hey everybody, it's Never, and today I wanted to quickly show you what I have been gaming on and how this whole new world of computing is going for me. So this is a Legion 7i, and it's the 2021 version. I forget what generation that is, but I'm literally sitting in bed being lazy right now to demonstrate to you how different things are. So I'm going to hop in, show you some specs, and fire up Guild Wars and demonstrate a couple of cool things. Let's go ahead and go. This is a Razer Naga Pro because I needed to switch to something that has wireless. So I'm going to turn that on so it can communicate. And now you can see that one of the reasons I chose the 7i is because it has what some may consider to be a disgusting amount of RGB, which is something that I, in fact, love very much. So I'm going to wake this up in a stealthy way so that I can sign into it without revealing any of my secret stuff. I guess I'm just going to have to bring it up here to do it. Okay. Now, I could be really clever and edit this together with some screen capture, but this is all about being lazy and gaming in bed, so this is what you get. All right, so what this has in it is the i7-11800H and 32 gigs of RAM. It came with 16. I'll talk about the RAM in just a minute, and an RTX 3060. So first of all, CPUs are getting more and more comparable desktop to laptop. In fact, for most applications, there is almost no difference between the laptop and the desktop version of the same CPU. Similarly, RAM and storage obviously perform the same, and GPUs are getting very similar. Come back to the GPU in a minute. It's time to talk about storage. This came with a 1 terabyte PCIe NVMe M2 SSD, or just a PCIe SSD, and I added a 2 terabyte on top of it, and it's stupid fast in I/O, which is great. The RAM, on the other hand, if you're getting one of these Legions, like a Legion 5 Pro or Legion 7i, Legion 5i, any of those, be wary of the default RAM that comes with it, or I guess the stock RAM. It is not the best. There's plenty of videos out there about that, but essentially I replaced it with some dual rank RAM that is not meant to run with XMP. It's fast on its own, and that has made a noticeable improvement in performance, and I put in 32 gigs instead of 16. Honestly, 8 gigs of RAM is a safe minimum these days, but it's not very future-proof. 16 is a pretty comfortable place to be. I went with 32 just because the cost difference was fairly negligible from the deal I was able to get, and it will allow this to never need to worry about having more RAM. So let's talk about the GPU. While we do that, I'm going to fire up Guild Wars 2, and a cool thing that you can do is if you've got Blish HUD installed, you can just double-click the Blish HUD system tray icon, and it will launch Guild Wars 2, but you can't see my login, and it will automatically click the buttons to log you clear into the game, just like that. Boom. So we're logging all the way in. It's wonderful. And so here's Dynamite Danger Cat, and I'm going to scoot this forward a little bit so that you can see everything. So we're going to go into game and talk about the GPU a little bit. So this is a 3060, an RTX 3060, and there are 3080 options. The 3080s tend to add anywhere from like $500 to $800 or so to the cost. And in a lot of cases, they don't actually perform much better or any better than a 3060 or sometimes a 3070. The reason for that is something called TGP, which is not TDP. That's a different thing. TGP is total graphics or total GPU power. And that is how much wattage is allowed to go to the GPU. These are like 130 or 140 watts for the 3060, which is, I believe it maxes out for the 3060 at 145. So it's really good. Many laptops will have only like 60 to 90 watts for a 3060, which, as you can imagine, does not give it its full capability and therefore kind of sucks. I'm going to turn on some frame rate information and show you my graphics settings for Guild Wars 2. So you can see that just about everything is all the way up because I really like that. Oh, where's the depth of field? Turn that on. Yeah, I like all the fancy stuff. And I'm getting in Lion's Arch here, looking at a bunch of people, and you'll notice that those two Kiss of Death things, the character model limit and character model quality, are both at the highest because of insanity, because this is where you really start putting a GPU through its paces. And so right now it's pushing like 78 watts to it because there's a lot of things that go into that factor. But going back to TGP, this is what you want to be aware of. You want to look up the TGP on a laptop, because if it's not the full capability of what the card can do, then it's going to always be crippled. And a lot of times the reason they do this is to avoid thermal throttling. Well, the cooling solution in these is very, very good. You can hear it coming on and starting to make its noise, where our GPU temperature is going up. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. A 3080 is going to need quite a bit more wattage than the 3060 will. It's like 165 or something on the upper end of those. And so if you get a 3080 that only gets 130 watts maximum, it's not going to perform much better than a 3060. So that's something to be aware of and be careful about. And so that plus the cost difference is why I went with 3060. I'm pretty happy with it because it's still light years ahead of what I was running before with my 1060 non-TI. This runs circles around that, which is great. But the other thing I want to talk about is related to thermals, and that is you can hear the fans going pretty well on this. When you're gaming, it really wakes them up, and they make a lot of noise. And part of that is just because this is a good cooling solution. It's vapor chamber. It's got two really good fans, and apparently the cool thing to do now is to count the number of blades on the fan, so they have like 70 something, I don't know. But you can see right here, if you can see that, we're pushing 68 degrees Celsius. If I were to let it sit like this and continue to game, it'd probably cap out somewhere around 70, maybe a little bit more. But we can do something about that. You've seen all these stands that laptops can sit on that have fans that blow up into the laptop and whatnot, and that's good, and the fans can help, but the most important thing is that it's just not getting cold air to it. The surface of this is pretty warm. It feels nice right now because it's winter, but under here, the air that's going in here is getting warmed by the vents that are right around here. So what do? Well, we do this. I got this little thing. This is a kickstand. If I can push it open right, there's a little slider deal right here. And the kickstand comes out. And there's another one over here. So if I get my kickstands out and set this down, and we just listen, the fans quiet down. And now we were at 68, we're already down to 62 Celsius. If I scoot this up so you can see it with my ultra lazy video that I'm making. And if we let this keep going, it'll get down into the 50s pretty fast. Already pushing 60 and hovering around there. That's because there's a lot of cold air getting to it. In fact, the air coming out of the vents is now cooler. It makes that much of a difference. And you can find other videos that test a bunch of these different cooling solutions. The kickstands are about 95% as effective as even the most expensive ones that blow air with fans into the laptop's cooling vents underneath. So spend $16 and get yourself some kickstands, and that makes all the difference in the world. You don't even need the fans under there. Now, my stand has fans, and they work fine, and I'm happy with it, but the kickstands make it so that I can take that cooling solution and portability anywhere. It is wonderful. So that's another thing that is really cool to do. The last thing I want to talk about with this is the display. This is I'm going to put these down so I can put this at the right angle. This is a 16 by 10 aspect ratio display. And so it's 2560 by 1600. And that means it's taller. It's actually the golden ratio, or very close to it, 1 to 1.6.8. And that's, to my eyes and to my experience, this is much better than 16 by 9. Not just because you've got more vertical viewing space, which looks nice, but it's also a more comfortable size for a display to be. It feels widescreen without it being obnoxiously widescreen, and I feel like I've got a lot more ability to look at things like the sky and whatnot without having to do goofy stuff with my camera. That also means that since this is a taller display, it can fit a 16-inch display into the chassis of a 15-inch laptop. Because this is the same chassis that you would find with a 15.6-inch device. You can see how the keyboard goes all the way to the edges almost. Whereas with a 17-inch, the keyboard would come out to, or the edges would come out to about here, and the keyboard would be the same size. And so that's another benefit, is you get some really nice space-saving effects, because you don't need to have this humongous laptop you're lugging around, but it's only 1 inch smaller than the 17-inch laptop's display. It's also a very bright display. Some of these, this one in particular, came with a 500 nit display. I don't even have it at max brightness, and it's still really bright. I could turn it up some more. So the displays on these are really great. The last thing I want to talk about is battery life. People who buy these types of laptops do not buy them for their battery life. If I'm sitting in gaming, I'm lucky to get about 90 minutes of battery life before I'm at 15%, and I really ought to charge it. That may sound horrible, and for battery life, it certainly is. But, like I said, you don't get these for battery life. If I'm just doing non-intensive things that don't require the discrete GPU, and, like I'm looking at memes or something, then I'll get somewhere around up to 3 hours of battery life. But these are meant for intense productivity or for gaming. This comes with a 300 watt power supply. The 300 watt one is over at my desk. This is a 230, which is all it really needs. You can find places to do that math, but it's no slouch. I mean, when they call it a brick, it's not meant ironically on this. It's pretty significant, but this is a desktop replacement. It's not a portable thing so much. It can be, but it's not really meant to be. Another thing I really like about these, and this is just a Lenovo thing, is that this plug is not a circle. It is a rectangle, which means it fits in here and it stays very snug and doesn't wobble around and get all janky. I cannot tell you how many laptops I've had to take apart and repair the power cable connection on, but never on one of these rectangle plugs. So that's another nice benefit. Anyway, this is the new system. This is what I'm doing all my gaming and production and everything on. And I hope that this has been helpful. If you have any questions about this or related things or anything that you want to see, please leave a comment, and I'll be happy to talk about it in a future video and give any more tips that you want. I've been very happy with pretty much the entire experience from Lenovo in this regard, and in my foray into, this is the first laptop I've ever bought for myself. It's been pretty great. So that's all I have for that. Okay, thanks, bye.